tagged to be moderating this pre-screening Q&A of Dungeons & Dragons weeks before it's going to be in theaters, and I'm thrilled to be introducing, I don't know what the order is, so I'm just going to say some names. I got Michelle Rodriguez. Justice Smith. Sophia Lillis. I said, and producer Jeremy Latcham.
You don't know you know Jeremy, but you do actually know Jeremy. A man getting Iron Man, Spider-Man, this dude's giving you all the good stuff.
All the mans.
Oh, all the mans.
That's actually how I'm starting it, if you guys don't mind.
What's up, everybody?
Jeremy has produced a few Marvel movies, like Iron Man, The Avengers. He did this...
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, a few things. So I'm curious, when you compare the making of... I'm curious, how would you compare the making of some of the Marvel movies you worked on to the making of Dungeons & Dragons?
The thing that this shares in common with the making of the Marvel movies is going all the way back to Iron Man 1, which I was but a child when we made that movie. I think I was all of 26 years old.
So good, bro.
It's a good movie, right? And this is the beginning of something exciting, and I think it has the same sort of promise and hope and adventuring spirit that we had there. And the nicest part about making this film is we were starting at the ground, and we could make something brand new and as part one of something. And there's no plan for a sequel. There's not a plan to make a part two. We've not been planning a part two. And just like we made Iron Man, we said, let's just make one good movie and make something great and step away from having to have plans and timelines and all this stuff and just make something cool. And it was really, really gratifying to just be starting an adventure together. And this cast is so great to be on this adventure with. Like, truly the greatest cast.
For the actors tonight, I am curious, what was it about, by the way, because no one's seen the movie, I'm asking a little more I can't really ask specifics yet. I'm just going to say for each of you, what was it about the project that said, oh, I need to do this?
You want to go in order? Okay. I wanted...
This level of organization, this is what you're in for.
This isn't a spoiler, but I play a sorcerer in the movie, and I always wanted to have magic powers, and so I got to do that. I also am English in the movie, as you will see, and I've always wanted to be English. I got to do that as well.
I have to say the attraction for me was John and Jonathan's, the directors of the features, script. There was, when you're talking about an IP that's been around for close to 50 years, there's a lot of humans involved, thousands of hours and thousands of hours of gameplay, and an appreciation and a love for the world that has already been built. And you have to have a profound respect for that if you're ever going to touch something like that. And I think that they passed the test, at least for me, with the script. And that's why I decided to be a part of the project, because I said, oh wow, here are these guys who aren't like saying, oh dude, 50 years of free advertising, let's make a movie. It's like more along the lines of like, I love this world, let's make an adventure everyone can enjoy and do it justice. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. It's the script that brought us in. I think there's that thing where... how many folks in the audience are Dungeons & Dragons fans already? Look at that! Of those fans, how many of you are terrified that this movie isn't going to be what you want it to be? Honestly. Right. That's us. That was us who picked up the script. Everyone picked up the script and went, okay, a Dungeons & Dragons movie, I don't know what this is going to be. And then you kind of flip through it. By the time I closed the last page, I had laughed so much. There was so much heart, so much humor. It was so much more human than I think any of us were expecting. And that's the magic source that I think John and Jonathan, who are D&D players, they're hugely passionate about that. They wrote Spider-Man Homecoming, so they know how to take like an IP that has all of these costumes and lore and backstory and how to cradle fans like that very lovingly. But they also know how to hold the general audience and just make a very human story where all of that's dressing. Like D&D, if you're D&D fans, you know the Dungeons & Dragons isn't about dragons and magic and swords. That's all there. It's about that feeling when the five of you get around a table and goofy, stupid shit happens that no one else will ever understand. And it's dressed in swords and magic and sorcery, and that's what this movie gave me. And I wanted to hang out in that world, and I wanted to have that goofy, magical shit happen with real stakes that I can tell my friends about, that you guys are going to tell your friends about, and I want to share that feeling in an audience with you. That's why we did the movie.
Yeah, I read it. I liked it.
I'll ask you a different question then. What is the secret to playing an owl bear?
That wasn't me. That was CGI. That was
Steven just thinks all owlbears look alike, man.
that was CGI. No, it was not me in a green suit or anything, but I did think for a second like that was gonna be a thing I had to learn. So I did research, animal documentaries and whatnot, and turning into a lot of. I also did some stunt work stuff. And kind of like animal kind of based, like how would she move, how would she fight, and how would she transform into these creatures. So that sort of answers your question.
And then John or Jonathan said, by the way, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no motion capture in this movie.
Justice, something that's cool about your character, and you said this previously, is how you wanted, when you were casting spells, to actually, could you talk about how you came up with that?
Yeah, I don't like when I see in movies people just gesture vaguely in a direction and like that's them casting a spell. I feel like that's lazy. So I really wanted to ground the spell casting in something real, and I've been learning sign language for like the last 2 years. I'm still not very good, but I do know some stuff. And I feel like if spell casting was real, it would be a communication of some sort to the space around you. A communication of what you want to happen. So I would find the sign of the word that had to do with the intended action of the spell, and then modify it a bit so it looked a little more spellcastery. So I grounded all my gestures in some sort of substance. Yeah. Yeah, it is cool. It is really cool.
I like this crowd already.
A lot of people in this audience know how movies are made, but is there anything about the making of Dungeons & Dragons that might surprise people to learn?
I think one thing that I think we did in a really cool way was the most prosthetic stuff that I've ever had on a movie. We had Legacy on doing so much intricate work, and I think that people look at practical effects and they say, oh, those haven't changed since Jurassic Park, but visual effects have evolved greatly. But the magic behind practical effects has changed so much, even since we started making the Iron Man and Guardians movies, and we had the most cutting-edge practical effects.
Dude, I was hanging out with these guys.
Yeah.
They are the best. Like, you go into their work area and you're seeing, a dragonborn being built from scratch. You're watching these painters add their stuff on to robots. And then you're seeing the animatronics guy come in, the robotic guy come in with his remote control and hook this whole thing up. Then you have to watch this whole thing be put on a human who can't breathe. It's like 100 and whatever degrees outside.
Yeah, we actually had one actor that showed up as there's Tabaxi in the movie, which is, I think, really cool.
D&D folks are gossiping,
Yeah.
everyone else doesn't matter. Everyone doesn't matter.
So if you're into Tabaxi, they're in the film, but we had an actor show up and we said in the casting call, like, it's really important that you can wear this prosthetic for 12 hours. And the person showed up, and it's this really intricate prosthetic, and the person couldn't do it. And luckily there was someone around who was like, hell yeah, I'll put on a Tabaxi prosthetic. And we had to go train this person in all this work on the day, because it's really intense work. It's really cool, and I think that's really surprising in the film.
So awesome. I
It's
can't
really
wait to show you guys on Instagram once the movie's out already.
Hugely character. Like he got that full Jim Henson feel, but as you said, this has come on so far. Every time it's like a pile of barrels in the movie, there's usually a guy hiding behind it with a really complex remote control.
Yeah.
He's controlling like every twitch and muscle in the face of the Tabaxi or the Dragonborn. And as an actor, you're spoiled because these guys are really there in front of you. I'm acting with a living, breathing creature that's doing some really, quite frankly, offensively good acting.
After the movie, you guys can ask John and Jonathan, because they're coming for a Q&A, where the remote controls are, because they're in there somewhere. They can tell you where they're at.
One of the things about the film, and you sort of touched on it already, is that if you don't know anything about D&D, you will really enjoy this movie. But if you do know about D&D, there's so many things for you to pick out. Can you sort of talk about that?
Easter egg, spoiler alert.
We worked really closely with Wizards of the Coast, Jeremy Jarvis and Nathan Stewart's teams to really put detail into everything. So every piece of writing that's on a wall that's in Thoras can be read and translated and is accurate to what's happening in the scene, and and there's a lot of stuff that art didn't exist, it just existed in text. And so they would put an artist on and draw it exactly how they had always imagined it. And so for those guys, I think for Jeremy and Nathan, it was a real opportunity to see stuff that they'd been imagining for the 20 years they've been working on the brand, to see that come to life, which was really cool. So we really, and these guys were also game.
Even down to the last wire. I know I did some ADR lines to modify certain details that we had in the movie. Specifically, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer, Doric is a druid and she turns into an owlbear, but druids don't normally turn into owlbears, so we had to add a line about how Doric is one of a kind. So that attention to detail, it was so important.
Well, and all of your verbal components to the spells, there was real passes at okay, this spell has a verbal component, let's make sure that we're addressing it, and even when you just have to yell something random at times.
Yeah, there's spells that have verbal components, there's spells that have material components, there are spells that have gestures, but not all of them can be casted the same way. And
And a lot of rest periods. So there's a good 30 minutes of the movie that's a rest period. So, and we just had to be accurate. So during the rest period.
For everyone, actually, when you saw the shooting schedule before a shooting began, what was the day that you had circled on the schedule? This is either going to be an effing terrible day or the best day ever.
Waterfall.
Freaking
waterfall.
I was like, oh boy.
There was an entire day that we spent most of the day up to chest-height water with water streaming down on top of us the entire time. I remember we had no sound crew that day. I can't remember why. I think they went down with COVID. And so we're underwater, covered in electronics. We have no sound crew. We called in the only other sound crew in Northern Ireland in the middle of the pandemic. And they were like a wildlife David Attenborough crew. They never worked on a blockbuster. So they kind of come in with the widest eyes you've ever seen going, how do I mic up armor? What that's going to be diving underwater and fighting a massive chunky dragon. And you just kind of make it work. And I think that's the spirit very much of D&D.
I mentioned that day today. I mentioned that day that we had to Chris, and he completely forgot.
I don't think
It's like he blocked it out of his mind.
Central trauma
I was like, you don't remember? You were swimming.
the thing they're not telling you too is that we were shooting in Northern Ireland in the winter, and the water that we could get for this was not heated because it is not practical to heat that much water.
But now this is on you, producer man.
Well,
The bright idea to keep the actors warm in this process was okay, they're going to be underwater and freezing cold. So, genius over here goes, we'll keep them warm with jacuzzis. We'll have warm water to keep the cold water warm. But no one knew how to work a jacuzzi. So the production spent all this money on hot water that didn't get hot, and so we went from one cold puddle to another cold puddle, back to the cold puddle.
The only thing I can say is if you'd gotten in the hot water, then gotten back in the cold water would have been even colder. I think that's how it's supposed to work. So why was doing it to make your life better? It was awful. I was at Video Village going, oh man, I think we're gonna have a rebellion today. Because the sound crew, literally, they were documentary, like BBC documentaries, and it was horrifying. It was really tough.
They were really game. In fairness, they were incredibly
They were really
game.
nice.
They got
yeah,
in the
that's true.
water.
And
they
you
got
guys were really
in the
game. I mean, when you see it, it's
I still went in the hot tub. But I liked the idea of the hot tub, so I wanted it to work.
For everybody, I would imagine, and maybe it was this day that you will remember forever, but was there another day that was just something you will take with you for the rest, something, the strong memory of the shoot?
I'd say plenty, and most of those days had to do with the legacy crew and just the fantastic job they did, and also the art department and the fantastic sets that we walked into. I mean, I was just thrown away, blown away by it all. I know, because seriously, like when you're there and you're in a castle, for instance, in England that's like from the 1700s or whatnot, and then all of a sudden you see a dragonborn walk by because he's about to be in the scene, in the background, and I'm just like, where am I? I just stepped into the Twilight Zone, or you're on one of the biggest sets that we did that we were in with the Thorachod. God, me and the words, the Dungeons and Dragons words, we don't get on very well, but the big dragon, I don't know if you're allowed to say fat dragon, but it was a big dragon. It was a dragon that eats a lot. And we're on this set, and that set was fantastic. I mean, that day was pretty cool.
That was cool. Do you guys know the phrase, the wheels fell off, like something's going really badly? We had a day, we built this carriage that was, there's a sequence in the movie where there's a giant
tell us
carriage.
this afterwards.
And the wheels, I had to call the studio that day, and the wheels had actually fallen off of the carriage. And it was heavy. It was really heavy.
It weighed like more than a ton. And the poor horses, 6 horses I think had to carry that thing.
Yeah, and they were running with it, and they were wonderful. They're horses that are bred to carry carriages, but the wheels fell off of the carriage. Literally, the axle just popped, and I will remember that forever because I called.
We almost lost a day.
The wheels fell off the movie. I'm so sorry. I failed as a producer. The wheels are actually
Trying to
off.
find a craftsman from the local Red Fair was terrible.
The chariot is sick, though. I mean, the guy put a lot of work into it, but you did not have to make it out of real wood and steel, dude. Seriously, 3D print the sucker,
So, I'm curious for the actors, which of you always nails it on the first take, and which needs a few to get going?
Chris nails it on the first
Yeah,
take
he
a lot.
does.
I take a couple of scenes to get. I gotta say, but it's the New York thing always pops out, and I'm like, I can't be a barbarian with a New York accent. So yeah, it took me a minute. Hey, yo, Vinny, by the way, there's a dragon behind you. Know something about the dragon, you know what I mean? What's wrong with you?
Makes a dragon shawarma.
That's good.
You guys?
Wait, what was the question?
Do you typically get it on the first take, or do you need a few?
I think
You
I
take
would.
a bit.
I think. No, I think I would get it on the first take. I would just break a lot. I'm a laugher. I laugh a lot when other people are doing funny stuff, and Michelle makes me laugh a lot. All of these people do. Regé makes me laugh, and Sophia makes me laugh. So, but if they're not funny, then I get it on the first take.
I take a bit.
Yeah.
Every time you nailed it.
That's how you know you need to be funnier, if I'm not laughing. If I don't get it, if I get it on the first take, then you didn't do a good job.
We're learning a lot about each other.
Oh, I take a bit. I definitely take a bit. I take my sweet time,
I think you take your time to get to the standards you want to get to. I think you're pretty reliable. You'll nail it first time and then just climb that mountain.
I'll take it.
So this, obviously no one has seen it yet, but this movie has some incredible action, and you guys, on the end, you do some crazy stuff in the movie. Talk a little bit about how actually what is it like getting ready for a role like this, where you are going to be performing and doing some pretty detailed action?
Ooh, I gotta say, it was a lot of protein shakes. I'm not used to eating that much, and gaining 15 pounds of muscle and having to work out all the time every time my trainer showed up. I'm like, really? But yeah, it pays off, because in the end with the choreography, and the fight sequences, it helps. I get to help out my stunt double. So 50% of what you see is my stunt double out there throwing people over her head, and the rest is me. And I think we worked well together. I think it resonated with a lot of the audiences so far that have seen it. But we'll see what you guys think, let me know. If we pulled it off or not.
I mean, I'll tell you that for me, Michelle's character Holger has some of the best action sequences I've seen in some time. I know that. No, for real. Because you hit that magic spot. John and Jonathan talked to a lot of directors who were very passionate that they didn't want this to feel like a green screen movie. Like, yes, it's fancy, yes, there's magic. We talked about all the practical creatures, all the practical effects, but that came down to also making sure that Michelle and I were in the stunt tent every day, that we weren't filming, just going through these sequences. You got to be conditioned to be able to do this take after take after take. The stunt guys were not messing around. They were kind of this Eastern European crew who kind of just don't know what being nice to actors is. And they think they're being nice, and bless them, but it's pretty hardcore.
That sucked, try it again.
But no, John and Jonathan, like, they talk a lot, and they've talked in the press tour about wanting this to feel a little bit like old Jackie Chan movies. They wanted the action to feel like it has weight. They wanted to stay in these long takes, so you can see the actors pulling these things off, but also that there's wit to that. So like your fights in particular, I think have something that I haven't seen in cinema for quite a while, where there's thrills and there's danger, but also there's humor laced in. So there's some really fun little prop gags. There's that bit with the bow and arrow that gets me every freaking time.
By the way, I gotta say, I love Zank's weapon. Pay attention to his sword. The sword is awesome. It does something really cool.
No, the blade
That's all
will
I'm gonna
virtually
say about
break.
it. I'll let you guys figure out what that cool thing is. But if I were a kid and I were to buy the toys, I'd be like all about the Zank sword.
The craziest thing that our stunt guy said to us at one point, we were working on a stunt early in the movie, and I'm still not sure what this means. He was Bulgarian, and his name's Dion, and he said, I said, how do you feel about the choreography? He goes, it's good, sexual but brutal. That means, and I'm still wondering what that means, but I was scared when he said it. Sexual but brutal. Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know what it means. I was scared.
Wow.
Yeah. I said, okay, Dion. It looked cool though.
365 days of D&D.
That's actually, that's great. And I'm just going to say, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give a warm thank you to the cast. I really mean it sincerely. The movie is so good. Everyone here is about to have a great time. I don't say that all the time. People know that about me. But listen, you guys have a fantastic night. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
We're going to start the movie in a second, so everyone stay seated, and the party will continue.
Go for it. Wow.